All right, so the first question I have here is from Jane, and she just says, thank you so much for this amazing webinar. But my question for anyone who is not a big meat eater, how many grams of protein should one have daily to get the maximum results while using X49?
Wow, so this is an interesting question. So I'm going to assume that the person is doing some type of resistance training. So when we're talking about building muscle and reducing body fat, there has to be a stimulus there. And the stimulus should be some type of resistance training. I know, Emily, you and I, we love weightlifting. You might be more extreme than me at this point. I know you're really pretty hardcore on your weightlifting. Or it can be calisthenics, could be push-ups, could be isometric exercise. But you have to have some type of resistance training. Preferably, the resistance training, you're going to failure. And there's lots of ways of doing this. Again, I'm going to address this in the August convention, but you could use a very lightweight and you could do high repetition to failure. The clinical studies show that you can actually get muscle hypertrophy with this. Or most people prefer to use a little bit heavier weight, lower repetition, but of course there's higher potential for injury there. But suffice it to say, you've got to have the exercise there first. Okay, now once that's in place, what we need to think about is how do we, the question is a little bit more complicated than simply how many grams of protein do you take per day, because we have to balance this out by age and other factors. So let's first look at how you turn on muscle protein synthesis. This is almost exclusively done by the amino acid leucine. So leucine is one of the branch chain amino acids. So it's leucine, isoleucine, and valine. And a typical dose might be 4 to 5 grams of the branch chain amino acids with 2.5 grams of leucine. Now that would be fine for people up until the age of about 35 or 40. But as we get older, we need to have more leucine to turn on muscle protein synthesis. So could be as high as 3 or 4 grams of leucine. So if someone is, let's say, over the age of 50 and they want to build muscle, I'd want to make sure that with whatever protein they're consuming, they're getting at least 3 to 4 grams of leucine. Okay, that would be the first thing. The next thing is if a person's goal is to get tone and keep the muscle they have, the protein consumption is going to be very different than if a person is trying to bulk and put on a lot of muscle. And of course, there's a tremendous amount of information about this and people have different opinions about it. Keep in mind that Bill Pearl, who I had the good fortune of meeting many years ago, who was a Mr. World winner and a consultant to NASA, he won the Mr. World competition consuming 80 to 90 grams of protein per day. Now that's really kind of crazy when you consider that in the Mr. Olympia competition, they're consumed between 450 and 500 grams of protein per day. So I would say if it was a 200-pound man, 200 grams of protein per day is a good number to shoot for if you're really trying to bulk and gain a lot of muscle. 150 grams or so is probably okay. So if you wanted to use 1 gram per pound of body weight, it may be a little overkill, but you definitely have enough protein at that point. It's also, since I've done this many times, if you're bulking to put on a lot of muscle, you divide up that protein amongst meals. You know, you don't try to take it all at once. So you might be getting 40 grams of protein at any meal. So that means you'd have 5 meals per day. or it would be 3 meals and 2 protein shakes, that kind of thing.